Hey, good morning, Eastern Oregon, and welcome to this March 20th version of AM Live on EOA, your connection to Eastern Oregon. All of our stuff on Linktree can be found at eoa.network. That takes you to a location where you can see our Facebook and our YouTube, our Roku, and our web page, and also a place that you can click on that will take you to the different podcasts that are available. Here in just a little bit, we are going to have new Union County Commissioner Jake Seavert will be here with us to talk about how he's doing. So, how are you, man?
Good morning.
Yeah, good
Good.
morning.
Good. It's first Friday.
Yeah,
First Friday. Yeah.
yeah. So we didn't. I wasn't feeling well on Tuesday, so we didn't have a show then. But yeah, but so it's a little weird getting back into the studio after.
Back at it.
Yeah.
Back at it. It's all. This month has flown by. It's crazy.
Yeah.
We're already on March 20th. My goodness. And then the weather. What the? Get out of here. It's on. I think it was last Friday. We haven't had a show since then, but Thursday night it snowed, and then Friday we were supposed to have games here. They all got moved all over the country. It's ridiculous.
Well, and it's kind of, man, over the weekend, I'm trying to remember when it was. I mean, big old flakes, just popcorn size flakes were coming down, you know.
It's almost April. It's time.
Well, I think today is the first day of spring. Or it's the 20th or 21st. I'm trying to remember.
I think it's the 21st, probably.
I think so too, but I thought I heard somebody say that today was the first day of spring.
It's crazy, man.
Yeah.
The weather here, and it gets later every year. It's can you imagine in 20 years it's going to be like May, the end of May, and it's going to be snowing for the last time. It's wild.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah. The farmers adjusting to this would be, I mean, they're just constantly having to dodge the changes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, you want to do sports?
Let's do it.
All right.
AM Sports Report brought to you by Hobby Habit. Right now, the Traxxas Super Spring Sale is going on. Save $50 on one TRX4 Sport High Trail or $150 on two. Find all things Traxxas at Hobby Habit, 411 1st Street in LeGrand, just for the fun of it. EOU baseball split this last weekend with Warner Pack at home. They played well. I mean, this team is the best EOU team by far, baseball-wise, since they brought baseball back. They are 7-15 overall and 4-9 in the CCC. They've already won more CCC games this year than they have any other year since baseball came back. They host LCSC, which is going to be a big test. They got swept over there in Lewisburg, and they're hosting the Warriors this weekend. And Saturday 12-3, Sunday 11-2, Optimus Field right here in LeGrand. EOU Track and Field started their season this past weekend. They had 3 track and field athletes of the week. Adrienne Washington was the female field athlete of the week. She hit a B standard in the high jump. Mark Church hit a B standard in the javelin, taking second place. He was the field male athlete of the week. And Scotland Hill was the track athlete of the week in the CCC female. She was 9th in the 100-meter hurdles with she look for her as an up and comer. I mean, she's been running really well for this EOU track team. The EOU track team's always good. They're always going to be in the top 20-ish in the country, and it's actually pretty fun to watch. EOU softball moved up a spot to number 13 in yesterday's coaches poll. They had a great weekend this weekend. Here's a little stat for you. EOU softball the CCC has had 2 pitchers of the week, national pitchers of the week this year. Well, both those pitchers, the week after they won the national pitcher of the week, they went against EOU, and EOU beat them both twice. Both pitchers twice in the same weekend. Man, this team is really good. The 3-0 weekend pushed the Mounties to 10-3 overall, 8-1 in the conference. This team hits, runs, pitches, and plays defense. But the best thing about this Mountie softball team is their energy level. Man, it's fun. The energy in the whole place is just a different level this year. Kylie Parsons was named the CCC Pitcher of the Week this week after going 2-0 this weekend and not allowing a run. It's this. I'm telling you, if you have a chance this weekend, go watch them right here, Peggy Anderson Memorial, Saturday 1-3, Sunday 11-1. You won't be disappointed. It's exciting. The GOL All-League teams have been announced for the boys and girls basketball. The LHS boys had 3 second-team selections. You got Landon Hood, Beckett Hutchins, and Blake Hildebrandt, all second-team All-GOL. And then the girls put 5 on the All-League team, including first-team and Player of the Year Rowan Evans, first-team Peyton Daggett, both the juniors on the first team, and then seniors Kel Coleman, Olivia Pennington, and Carly Strand as second team All-GOL. Pretty cool. Head coach Brian Wright was also selected as the GOL Coach of the Year after the Tigers ended up winning the conference and taking 6th place at state. LHS started off right last night, beating the defending state champion, the Dowls, in girls softball. Maddie Seavert hit a home run, and Peyton Daggett hit her first career over-the-fence home run, a grand slam for the Tigers. The girls are in Boise this weekend for a tournament. LHS baseball gets their season going today at 4 against the Dowls in the Dowls. AM Sports Report brought to you by Hobby Habit, just for the fun of it.
All right. Thanks, man.
Yep.
All right, let's take a look outside at the downtown weather cam. And the hills are kind of frosty up there a little bit.
Yeah, does not look very inviting.
All right, and let's look at that weather graphic.
That's not horrible.
Full, yeah.
Other than the rain.
So 10 degrees difference between the high and low today. And that kind of looks like it's going to be, yeah.
Typical.
Looks like it's going to be a little rainy over the next few days.
Look at next Tuesday.
Yeah, I see.
Oh my goodness, 70. Let's go.
And I've heard several weather people predict that.
Yeah, it's going to be 70 on Tuesday and 34 on Thursday.
That's right. Yeah. All right. Well, hey, glad you guys are here with us today. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, new Union County Commissioner Jake Seavert will be with us. We'll be right back. All right, we're back with Union County Commissioner Jake Seavert. Are you used to people calling you Commissioner Seavert yet?
No. They call it the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
It's still pretty strong with me.
I'm calling you Jake. I'll always call you Jake.
We got history. But yeah, you walk into the office every morning and you're just like, how did I get here? It's the imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
Did you, when you were younger, you ever think you'd be a politician?
No.
That's
5 years ago, I wouldn't have thought.
No.
Yeah.
2 years ago, it's just. but things happen for a reason, I guess.
Yeah.
God got a plan.
Yep.
Ain't
Yeah.
no doubt about that.
Well, let's go back and let's talk about. So you were raised here. Tell us about your beginnings and your family here and such, so on and so forth.
Yeah. I always tell everybody I was born in Baker, but I was, being there short-lived. Raised in LeGrand and attended Heidi Ho, Island City Elementary. Went to the junior high and high school. Graduated. 97, I think, was our class there.
It was.
Yeah. So, pretty involved in 4-H and FFA through high school years. I think I played a little freshman basketball.
You did.
I played a lot of sports.
Yeah, you were on my team.
Till
freshman
about
year.
high school, yeah.
Yep.
And then I kind of focused on high school rodeo. So that was a big part of my life through college. Yeah.
What did you do in the rodeo? You were a roper, right?
I was a timed event guy, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in the team roping, calf roping, and then the steer wrestling.
That would be fun. Steer wrestling. It's
It
not
is.
for big people like me, but it looks like it's fun. And we have really good steer wrestlers from Eastern Oregon. Massey and
Hermiston.
Tyler Brown or is that
Jesse
his name?
Brown.
Jesse Brown. Yeah. A couple really good
I mean, and then
ones.
if you look back, Blake Knowles out of
Oh,
Hebner,
yeah,
and
I
Trevor
forgot
Knowles
about
out of
him.
John Day, and they pretty good group of guys up here really over the
Yeah.
last few years.
Pretty cool.
I mean, in high school, I wished I'd had another 30 pounds on me.
Yeah.
It was one of those deals where, man, I just keep eating, and then by the time you don't need that anymore, like my senior year of college, and that's when the 30 pounds showed up.
Yeah, right. You're like, dang it.
Where was this 6 years ago?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and so then what did you do in your professional career when you started? What kind of tell us about you?
Geez. Well, I can give you my whole history, really. Through high school, I started working at the Ag Research Center in Union under Oregon State University, just as a summer part-time help, and that continued through college as part-time help. And then 2 years after college, I was actually hired full-time as their assistant herdsman out there. Got to a point where I was like, man, this is all I know. There's a big world out there. Let's go check it out. And I took a production supervisor position with Lamb Weston. They're out of Hermiston, so we made the trek to Hermiston for a few months. And it wasn't bad when I first got hired. I was on day shift, and then they put me on rotating shift, and that was challenging.
Now, what did they do?
Made French fries, McDonald's fries. They made the McDonald's hash browns, and regular shredded hash browns that you'd see in like Costco in the big bags
Yeah.
and whatnot. And so the quality testing of it was good because you could always go by the QA lab and if you didn't pack a lunch or anything, just grab you a hash brown and off you go. The big treat was holidays. They worked in conjunction with Gordon Smith Foods there in Weston, and they made the apple pies and such for McDonald's. So during special occasions and holidays, the loading dock would throw a case on the truck to go to Hermiston. Well, then the girls in the QA lab would cook up apple pies for all the
That ain't
supervisors
bad.
and
Yeah. That's
QA
not bad.
girls. Yeah, it was good trade. They got some hash browns, we got some pies. So. But yeah, and then after that, I just kind of went back to production agriculture. Was a foreman, ranch hand, and a wheat cattle operation out of Athena, Oregon. Had a buddy talk me into getting into insurance. So I went the insurance route for a little bit, financial products actually with Country Financial. And then, that's a tough gig. And those guys that stick that profession out, hats off to you. I mean, it's really, if I wouldn't have had one child and then one on the way, I probably would have been able to flex my lifestyle a little bit to really get into that profession because that's what it takes, But it's good. And then I went to work for Pendleton Grain Growers as an outside salesman. Had the opportunity to move up to the feed company that supplied us and went to Montana. out of Great Falls, Montana, and worked as a nutrition consultant there. And then that led me into another position where repping another livestock product that covered a bigger territory. I was covering Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Montana, and Utah. So that gave us an opportunity to move a little closer back home to Cambridge, Idaho. And then, something happened in our lives, and we felt that we needed to be closer to grandparents and kids. And the kids were old enough to have good relationships with them, so we come back home. And it's good that I feel that people can get out and go do things and then be able to come back home at any time. That's what we tell the youth. Go explore. You can always come home. No one's going to say anything. And then when you get home, like us, for instance, we get to looking around this valley, and we're like, we take for granted growing up here.
Right.
You could cut this northeast corner of Oregon out and implant it in, mostly western Montana, and you'd fit right in.
Right.
Not geographically, people,
right.
agriculture, and here we are in little northeastern Oregon. So we're in a pretty unique area.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, and I found that too. I grew up in Wyoming, and when I arrived here almost 30 years ago now, it was like these people are like home,
Yep.
I mean, so that it's a good place to be.
Yep.
So, well, tell us about how did you decide to run for commissioner? Because you ran a little bit later than, I threw in early, but yeah, what kind of, talk about the politics. How did you end up deciding to do that?
I'd say in the last 5 years, I've really paid attention to politics and what's going on. 10 years at the national level, you really get involved. The older you get, the more you get involved in politics, right?
Yeah.
Paul, Commissioner Anders, was my FFA advisor.
Right.
And so we've always had a pretty good relationship. And so when I was working and he'd gotten elected and he'd stop by the store and pick up a bag of feed here and there for when he had goats. And I just always ask, so Paul, how's the commission thing going? What's going on in your world? And I think Commissioner Anders and Scarfo have done a tremendous job at bringing to light what county commissioners really do and what their role is. Before that, growing up, you knew about county commissioners, but you just didn't know what they did.
Right.
Yeah, no. When we were young,
absolutely.
I didn't.
Yeah.
I knew who I could probably name them, but that's about it.
Yeah. And so I think they've done a good job at almost being transparent to what that role fills. So there was a point there where I was like, maybe that wouldn't be a bad deal to you could get involved in politics because, like I said, moving back here, you just see what's going on, and it's one of those deals. I've used it in 2 instances so far. Is if you don't like the way things are going and you're not involved, I don't think your voice should be as loud, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I use that example with the Oregon Cattlemen's. I've been member of Oregon Cattlemen's in times past, but when we come back here and started a little cattle operation, I was like, man, it's time to get involved. That way I can have a voice and a right to complain if things aren't going right because I'm getting involved. And so I felt that way at the county level too. And it's not like nothing bad was going on, in my opinion, at the county level, but I had some ideas, and so to really try and make your voice heard and known, or, because we all talk politics when we're out, whether we like it or not, what's going on here, what's going on there. So I was like, at some point it wouldn't be a bad idea to get involved. And I wasn't quite, ready to run this time. I was asked late January to throw my hat in the ring, and I was like, man, is now a good time to do this? So I thought about it, and then I was asked again in February and by some people in the community, and I was like, man, I just don't know. So I said, what do I need to do? And they said, well, first and foremost, you need to go home and ask your spouse, my wife, Kim. And I was like, oh, perfect. She'll be my hard no. So I go home and I said, Kim, I've been asked to run for county commissioner. What do you think? And she's like, yes. It was a hard yes. And I was like, oh, you were supposed to be my hard no this round. I was supposed to talk you into it.
Thanks for bailing me out.
Yeah. So I was like, all right. Well, then I was still struggling with it. Is the timing right? You know, I've got a senior graduating this year. I've got one that'll be a sophomore, you know, and I was like, well, so I struggled with it for another 4 or 5 weeks and prayed on it. And I was like, well, you know what? This will be the tell. I'll run and I'll give it my one shot and see where we end up. And that's how, yeah. So I was late to the party. But I really didn't know who was running, you know, back in November and December and January until about February. But man, all of a sudden they all come out of the woodworks there in the last month or so. And I was like, wow. Because when I entered, I
think you were the fifth one in. Yeah.
To sign up. And at that time, especially, I was like, man, it's kind of a full room.
Right.
You know, five others or 4 others, that's a pretty full room. And so then I was like, all right, well then, heck, in the next week, it was literally a week until the deadline. 4 more entered the race, and I was like, wow, this is big. This is big.
Yeah. No, that was crazy. I don't think anybody expected there to be 9 people in the race.
No.
Yeah.
I think talking to Donna afterwards, she was like, I think at one time she ran against 5 others.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the big thing, you know. Typically, you only see 1 or 2 fill in the void. But again, I think the commissioners have done a good job at bringing to light what the roles is in the county, and people want to get involved. It's great. I like it.
Yeah. Now, sometime after you were elected, we talked, and you said, you know, we talked about had you run next time, and you said, I'm not sure I would have. I mean, this was kind of a distasteful process. I don't know what part of that was. Maybe that's not the word you used. But what part of that was difficult? I mean, I had my own experiences, but what? Yeah.
I'd say the amount of competition we had at first. You know, it was. That's a lot of people to run against, and so when there's 5 of you, when I signed up and knew there was 5 of you, there was a good chance no one was going to take that 50% plus 1. So then you get to thinking about it, because it would have been easy, right? If there was 1 or 2 of you, there's a good chance one of you is going to take that role, and so you're going to have to campaign for a short window.
Right.
And then because there's so many in there and no one hit the 50 plus 1, then all of a sudden you expanded your campaign trail another 6 months. Mm-hmm. And you're talking about hitting every event that you can. I mean, just being present in the community, attending all the town halls that the chamber put on and you guys assisted with, and just getting the word out, going out, shaking hands, meeting people, talking to people, showing up to this club, to that club. I mean, so time consuming.
Right.
It's absolutely time consuming. And I can see how these presidents and whatnot, you know, being on the campaign trail for dang near 2 years, by the time that it's nearing election day, they're just exhausted. Because I was exhausted because I was still holding a full-time job, had a senior graduating, just a lot of events go on throughout the summer, and it was just a lot. And I've made the comment that now I can see why people wait till they're a little older to run, because they have a little more time. They ain't got a family at home to keep together. So, and then it's unfortunate it takes money to campaign like it does. And we've had conversations with past commissioners and present, and just people in politics, like 10 years ago. I mean, if you raised $5,000-$6,000, I mean, that you could do something with that. You could do a lot of newspaper ads and maybe a few radio ads and whatnot. But now anymore, it takes a chunk of change, and to go find that in the community and your supporters. I mean, I'm thankful that there's that process, and but that's a distasteful part, is having to go to people and and say, hey, here's my plan, here's my goals, here's my strategy.
Yeah.
Now I need to fund it.
Yeah, give me some money.
Yeah, I don't like that part at all.
Yeah. Well, and Mark kind of set the bar high. That's public. I mean, he had a lot of financial backers to begin with. I mean, I think he spent $40,000 on the campaign or something like that.
Yeah,
And,
it's upwards of.
yeah, and that that is really hard to compete with. And that was my, I kind of went through some processes there too, because it's like, it's really, and that's happens in national politics. It happens everywhere. Is that the money seems to dilute the trueness of the message. It's hard to cut through to who people really are. Mm-hmm. But clearly, I mean, you spent a lot less than that. Probably less than a quarter of that.
It was what I figured. It was about a third.
Okay, and so I mean, but you competed well. Clearly, you won. So yeah.
Yeah.
And I was super happy about that.
It was, and that's like I say, when I was asked several times, or I was told several times before the election, if you don't win, we'd really like to see you run again in 2 years. And I was like, my gosh, for one, I'm exhausted.
Right.
I'd have to think about it. And I don't know if I would want to do that again. Like, this is my one and done. Then I can get my card and say, now I can complain about everything in the county because I attempted it. But I don't know. I would have had to really have thought about running again. But yeah. And my goal, I had a campaign consultant. She told me that, I'd probably have to raise $25,000 more than what I'd raised before the primary to be able to compete at a high level. And I said, no, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
I don't want to. I'll strategize enough to hit where I need to hit, and I feel like it's worthwhile, and focus on that.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because I talk to campaign experts also, and there seemed to be a little bit of a disconnect between kind of a homegrown race and a full-blown commercial campaign, and so and Donna experienced that too when she ran. I mean, she didn't raise, I mean, the money people gave her, that's what she used, but she didn't raise money at all, and just the organic part of who she was is what got her elected.
Yeah, I before the primary, I wanted to raise as little as possible. I actually didn't even attempt to raise any. I just had people approach me, hey, is there anything we can do to help you?
Yeah.
And I said, well, if you feel like making a donation, that way I could purchase some signs. That would be great. And because I didn't want to hit it hard and then not make it to past the primary type of a deal, and that's where I told people, because I had people like, what do you need? I'm ready to get in. I'm like, we're close enough to the primary. Let's step back, and if I make it past there, then we'll make a plan after that.
Yeah.
So no, everybody I think ran a pretty good campaign. Yeah.
Well, so let's talk about the commissioner position itself, because one of the, I mean, you're right. It's hard to know what a commissioner does. And even when you study it hard, it's hard to know what a commissioner does.
Yep.
And during the campaign, some of the power that a commissioner has, I feel, was a little distorted. Some of the candidates were like, yeah, we're going to do this, and we're going to go in and blah, 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 And I don't know, talk about that. What have you discovered now that you've jumped into it a little bit?
When I first started to run, had very little knowledge.
Yeah.
Even though, I've been in touch with the commissioners the previous few years, you just don't know. And they've been transparent. Through the campaign process, you're picking up things, you're meeting with department heads, you're kind of getting a feel for it. then you're elected in day one of office. I still didn't know fully what a commissioner does, because there's so much that they do at the local level, at the state level. So it's going to take probably, and it's going to take time for me to get under my feet, for one. And I was talking to you guys about this earlier. It's like when you first step into office, you're a liaison or a board member of all these clubs and boards and things going on in the county at a local level. You don't realize how much of that there is. And split up between 3 commissioners, my list is long.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, I think we're 3 months into the year, and I haven't even met with all the groups with the meetings. And first and foremost, it takes that first month to settle in of who's going to liaison for who, and we've got to get that through the process of a commissioner meeting. There wasn't much changes made from what roles Donna had to what roles I continue to carry on with that. So you're still constantly kind of learning what all the commissioners can do, and a big part of this learning process has been that the county college.
Yeah, talk about that.
It's an optional deal, but the Association of Oregon Counties, which Union County is a member of, and I believe, I want to say all but maybe 1 or 2 counties in the state are members of this association. They put it on for newly elected officials or commissioners, and fortunately, I got a scholarship through the Ford Foundation to cover all my travel, some meals, lodging, and the tuition of this program. So because we live in a rural area, and that's very thankful, saving some money there. But we met in January. We basically meet once a month, not this month, through June. It's typically we meet on a Thursday afternoon and are released at Saturday at noon. Our first one was in Corvallis on campus there because it was really focused on extension and what they do in the program there. And then, of course, we brought in some others, a local legal counsel for Benton County, and learned kind of what legal counsel can do in the commission or the county role. And then our second one in February was in Salem. And that was held at the Association of Counties building there, and so we were right by the Capitol. So one afternoon, we went and toured the Capitol and seen the Senate floor and the representative floor, which I've been to the Capitol before, but I had never took the time to go see the actual floors, and so that was good. And so you learn from all angles. I think next time, or this last time was about budgeting. Economic development, land use planning, CIS, which is City County Insurance Services, which that's kind of how we're insured through liability and property and everything. So, I mean, they teach you enough to kind of give you a background, but you're not, dang sure not an expert coming out of it. And so we'll continue that through June. I think our last one in June is going to be about public health, public safety. I hear maybe we'll go tour the academy, so I'm kind of looking forward to that. And so, I mean, they touch base on kind of everything encompassed in what county commissioners do and how to oversee it all.
Cool. So what are you loving so far? I mean, as you kind of dove into all of this pond, what part of it is the warmest spot for you? It's like, oh man, this is what I really enjoy.
Jumping in this year because it's a regular session at the Capitol. So we're in the long haul from end of January till looks like probably the end of June. It's overwhelming, because I think there was over 3,000 bills introduced from both the Senate and the rep side. And it's funny because there's so many bills, but there's so much going on. You kind of pick your bills that you want to watch that you kind of are interested in and follow them through. So that part's been the warm spot, like being involved in lobbying and advocating for this county. And it doesn't even have to directly impact this county. That has been fun. And then being down at the Capitol, meeting with the representatives and senators and, talking to them about a bill and giving your perspective on it. Call me a nerd, but it is a lot of fun when you dive into politics at the state level and the amount of, what do I want to say, we don't have a lot of persuasion, but they really respect county commissioners when you at the state level, and that's an extra grain of salt that you can put onto that advocacy of a certain bill or project.
Yeah. So give me an example of something that you've had a voice into that you really enjoyed.
Well, like yesterday, I testified remotely on House Bill 3116 as I'm the convener for the Upper Grand Ronde River Watershed Partnership. It's a place-based integrated water program, and that's been started since 2016. They got their plan approved at 2022. This was all Donna's baby, and so I was fortunate enough to get on and be able to testify at our level, because what's going on right now at that in that bill is they're appropriating $2 million out of the general fund to go to 4 programs that have been established and approved in the state. The Upper Grand Ronde, ours being one. There's a program out of Harney County. There's a program out of Grant County. And then there's a program over off the coastal range. They call it Midco. It's around Newport, and they've been approved. So that $2 million would be then distributed to us 4 to then be able to continue to fund and research. And now, because we're past the planning stage, we're into the implementation stage, and to start implementing projects. I know this has been a long process, and this is probably another warm spot too, as you can tell, is it's been a long planning process, but I feel like, the last year or two, it's just kind of really slowed down, and maybe we've lost some interest from some parties. Now's my time to be like, I'm new, I'm young.
Right.
I got the spark currently. Let's get a project going. Let's show, let's give you guys a reward for all your hard work for over the last 8 years. It's kind of my mentality. And so that's where I'd like to see this funding from this bill come in, so we can continue that progress.
So, and we kind of, during the flood of 2019, it was actually Mrs. Bingaman, and I'm sorry, I've forgotten her name. She called me one day and said, hey, I want you to get in an airplane. She just paid me as a videographer, get in an airplane and go take video and pictures of that, that flood. And she, that was her project. And we created a video that kind of shined a light on that project. And Donna has used that several times to kind of, when it goes bad, this is how it goes. Yeah. So, I'm pretty involved in that and got drug into that, and it was amazing to be a part of that. Give me an example of like what kind of a project are you going to do? Where are you guys at? Give me an example of a project that's kind of like ready to get started.
One that's ready to get started.
Well, or if you had the funding, it's been approved, it's kind of gone through the process. Where are you guys at for that?
There's several opportunities there. The one that intrigues me the most would be above ground storage.
Of course, yeah.
Because there's many faucets that you can direct management and flow of water. They allow you to collect and my goal is to have like an off-stream reservoir. So when I say that, we pump out of a stream into a upper basin water storage facility, a reservoir, and then we're able to release that water back into that stream at a different time of the year. I like it for many reasons because it can mitigate some flooding if in the right tributary. And then late season flow you can increase for irrigation purposes, for migration of young steelhead and salmon. So I like that idea because you have control over when that water is released and when it's not. Some current projects we can look at being done in the short term, they call them natural projects, to where they can maybe change some stream channels. And they've been working a lot of projects like that up the Upper Grand Ronde River, up by Starkey and Bird Track, and changing that out a little bit. You get a meandering stream, of course it moves slower, pushes water out into the area around that stream, and then has some benefit there. So that's something we could do immediately on some projects. And then another project we're looking at, or that they've studied and researched, was actually recharging an aquifer, and that was in the Catherine Creek area, to where they could pump water out of Catherine Creek back into an aquifer during the winter months and high flow months, and then release it again in the later months. So those are some of the things that they've researched and have plans on in the past. Now we're in the stage of this implementation. We just had a meeting last night about, now we need to get to a role to where we need to change some structure within the partnerships as far as voting, and then once we get past that, then we can actively have more conversation about what projects we're really going to attack.
And the above ground storage that you mentioned, that's different than just creating a dam and damming up a whole valley or whatever tell me how that works. That sounds interesting.
So obviously the siting has to be perfect. Where my idea is where you'd either pump or ditch excess flow to offsite, and that might be quarter mile away or less. Into the site's got to be perfect to where you're going to develop a catch pan or reservoir, and then later in the season, you can dictate. It's tricky though, because some of these above grounds that they've looked at doing, they have looked at just damming up, but it has to be high enough in the watershed that you're not going to disrupt the salmon and steelhead coming up to spawn. So when you get high enough in there, there's not enough water at that point to catch and to make a big difference in the flow change. So that's why I'm like, well, if we can find a spot lower in the water basin that we can either pump or ditch to a holding reservoir right there, and then later season can just return it back into the stream.
Interesting.
The big part about that was, and a gentleman brought it up last night, was the sediment and silt. Like if you were to put a dam across, a place in Five Points Creek, where it narrows up, or Catherine Creek, right there just above the parks, and you were to put a dam there, that's all fine and dandy. But when you have these high flow runoffs, all that sediment that comes down, and then pretty soon you're filling that reservoir back up over time. And so that way, I think you'd really minimize it if by choosing an off-stream storage.
Interesting. All right. Well, what else? Is there some other things that have been interesting to you?
I just cannot be as grateful as I am to be in this county as a commissioner. The longer I'm in here, the more I look and see that we have things together. And that's the department heads, that's Shelley, the administrator, and going to the county colleges and meeting with other commissioners and seeing the trials and the things that they're really having to face or restructure in their county. I'm like, man, we're so fortunate in Union County. There's nothing big going on. The AOC executive director I was having dinner with one night, and she's like, what challenges do you see in the next 4 years in your county? And I'm like, we don't have any at this time. Knock on wood, we don't have any at this time. So I take it with a blessing that gives us an opportunity to focus on projects. What can we do to build this community up? And I can't commend Commissioner Scarfo enough for his work on the water and sewer project at the county fairgrounds.
Yeah.
He just got notification that he's going to have a work hearing on that bill that he's been a part of, and we're stoked about that because he's been on that for
Right,
6-7
yeah.
years.
Right.
And so part of that is like, well, I asked him the other day, I'm like, what are you going to do when this passes? You know, then what are you going to work on?
Retire.
But no, there's always projects that you
Right.
can expand on and things to
Yeah.
change, and so I feel like we're blessed to be in this county, and yeah, we can tackle projects instead of put out fires.
Yeah. Let me ask you a cattleman question.
Sure.
Because you're the president, or you have been, right?
Yep, I'm the president. Yeah,
Okay.
currently
And so
of Union County.
of Union County, right?
Cattlemen's,
Yeah. So we've talked with Commissioner Anders a lot about forest access, and we spent quite a, because that's one of his areas. I guess what I'm wondering is, talk to me about the relationship between cattlemen, the Forest Service, and access, and how, because that is a conversation that came up when I was running, and anyhow, I'm just going to leave it open. Talk to me about those three relationships, if you would.
They're good, not perfect.
Yeah.
We still have access to graze cattle and public lands, and that's always a good thing. Creates opportunity for people getting into the business.
Yeah.
Because it is a lower fee. Takes a lot more work though.
Right.
But in my personal opinion, I think what's affecting us today at that level of access and whatnot is just lack of management. And it has created so many problems. It's not just number one and foremost, it's a fire hazard because we're not reducing fuel loads in our forests.
Right.
By not doing that, then have too much canopy cover. So you lose wildlife habitat under that by not allowing enough moisture and sunlight to bring up good grazing grasses in those canopies. So you're shifting the change of habitat for elk and deer. And then also, that also affects the grazing of cattle in those certain areas too. So in some cases, I think I was told that there is 2 grazing permits that are unoccupied right now. So one of my focuses is to try and look and get together with Forest Service to see what we can do to open them back up. But the concern of those is what I just mentioned. There's so much young lodgepole. Is it really benefiting, a guy to go in there with cattle if he can only run at a really low rate because there is no grazing habitat in there for cattle or wildlife? But I'd still like to see that opportunity. I'm hoping in the course of the next 4 years with the current administration and the current focus, like on the California fires, we've had devastating fires in the Portland area, 2020 and 21. I'm hoping that we can kind of see a shift of better forest management so that it can benefit us all.
We better, or we're going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I've said it over the last couple of years, Dodds, is it's not a matter of if, but it's a matter of when, Mount Emily catches on fire. And it's just
100%.
exposure. Residential, you got Mira, you've got people going up, traveling up there to go, which is fine and dandy, but if we don't start actively managing our forest, and when I say actively managing, I don't mean clear cutting.
Yeah.
In my mind, a good managed forest, it's going to look like a national park.
Right.
That's
So, talk to me for a minute, just from a 30,000-foot view of how does cattlemen use grazing land from the Forest Service? People that might not understand how they, what time of the year cattle are local and what time they're, kind of give me an idea of how a cattleman does that with their herd.
typically I'd say majority of the permits are run from about the middle of June to the middle of October on cattle grazing allotments on public lands, and that has a lot to do with not being on the ground too early and being ahead of the grass, and it also has to do with pulling them off early to leave some habitat there for wildlife after the cattle have gone. Because there has been a lot of, I think, significant data presented about how elk especially will follow cattle in their grazing patterns, because them cattle will take that down, to a lower stubble height, and then elk will come in 3 to 4 weeks after them because that new fresh green up, and that's what the elk really graze on. But yeah, typically, and so I don't know what the Forest Service grazing rate is right now. I want to say it's less than $2 a head, or the AUM, animal unit, a month. And so that includes the calf at her side. So you're, 100 head on some of these public grazing allotments might cost you $200 a month.
Okay.
And so it's fairly inexpensive.
And the reason they do that is because that keeps them from having to feed them. Like if you had them in your own field, and your field is eaten down, then you're gonna have to shell out money to feed them in some manner. And so no, it's like I said, a good opportunity for using cattle as a tool in the toolbox for forest management, but it also to run 100 head of cows even in the valley floor on good ground would you'd have to own several hundred, if not 1,000 acres just to run 100 head of cows. And this makes it to where a guy can, have 100 or 200 acres in the valley and run his cattle out on the summer pasture and then bring them into the fall. And interesting. All right.
Well, even after you paid to have them shipped, whatever, you still, it's a lot cheaper.
Yeah, and the time and money to go manage cattle in the forest, and then you got to go up. It's on you to get the fences up and between your neighbors or wherever, and they may help out with a few, supplies, a little bit of wire, some fence posts, but it's up to you to go around that allotment and keep your fences up and make sure that the springs are working actively so the cattle can water out of springs, and then, like you say, the transportation costs to haul them up there, haul them down, and it's a lot of management, but it's beneficial.
And there's a win on both sides.
Yep.
Yeah. Cool. Well, I don't know that we've had many cattlemen conversations, and so we'll kind of be looking forward to that as we talk. You kind of bringing that perspective to us.
Be happy to.
Yeah. Well, anything else you want to mention before we quit?
No.
Yeah.
It's like I said, everything's going great. There's movement and traction of things happening in the county, and I'm always happy to see us get grants to fund some projects and equipment at the county level. It's great. Puts a lot of strain off of the citizens. So I would love to see a philanthropist come in and build Sheriff Bowen a new facility.
Yeah.
I'd also like
money.
to tag them, a philanthropist to come in and build EOU a baseball stadium.
Oh, that would be awesome.
I'd also like to see a philanthropist come in and build us a multi-event center at the fairgrounds too.
Oh man, that would be amazing.
Like I said, there's projects that be had, so it's just chip away at them.
Yeah. Now, do you have a kid playing sports right now?
I don't. No.
Okay.
No.
He's got a niece.
I was going to say
Yeah.
that.
Well,
You mentioned
two
the
nieces,
Seavert.
actually.
Okay, yeah, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, JC plays for OIT, and Maddie is a senior, I think. Is she
Junior.
A senior? She's a junior.
Yeah.
She hit a home run last night.
Yeah, junior.
She hit a bomb last night.
Yeah, I didn't see
First
it.
game of the year.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was cool.
All right. Well, Jake, hey, thanks a bunch for being here with us. Yeah.
Yep.
We appreciate it, and you're going to be back once a quarter, hopefully.
Yep.
Yeah, and
He's on the schedule.
We'll try and not torture you too much.
No, this has been great.
Good.
It's been great.
All right. Hey, you want to get us out?
Let's do it. On this day, March 20th, 1854, anti-slavery activists within the U.S. Whig political party opposed to the Kansas-Nebraska Act formed a new party, the Republican Party. Notable politicians who switched allegiance: Abraham Lincoln, Rutherford B. Hayes, and Chester A. Arthur. 1954, on this day, a lot of you youngsters won't even know nothing about this. The first newspaper vending machine was used. 1996 on this day, and I got a little picture for this one. Eric and Lyle Menendez are found guilty of killing their parents. This is popular from my era of, and it's a really popular card right now. But that's a 1990 hoops, and that's Mark Jackson. But the significance of this card and the reason why it's worth money today is because down there in the lower left corner you can see the Menendez brothers are on the actual card. And that's one of the fun things about collecting cards is finding famous people in the background. Like a lot of people think it's cool. 2003 on this day, a U.S.-led coalition launches a ground invasion of Iraq after an ultimatum for Saddam Hussein and his sons to leave the country expires. 2019 on this day, the Walt Disney Company buys 21st Century Fox for $71 billion. That's a lot of...
Wow.
Who would have ever thought that the company that makes the movie buys the movie? You know, like it seems kind of backwards to me, but Disney pretty much owns everything, which is crazy. He starts as a guy's, vision to open this, park, and it turns into one of the biggest companies in the world. The number one song in America on this day in 1985, Can't Fight the Feeling, REO Speedwagon. REO Speedwagon actually performs a lot around here. Pendleton quite often, yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Yep.
Check that out.
The quote of the day comes from Chief Seattle. We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children. One more time. We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children.
All right.
That's it. Yeah.
Good stuff.
Thank you, Jake.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah, thanks a bunch.
Been good.
Yeah, thank you guys for being here, and we'll see you next week.